Good morning. I'm Edmund W. Gordon, as distinct from Edmund T. Gordon, my older son, who's a professor down at the University of Texas. I'm affiliated with Yale University and Columbia University, retired from both. I'm the John M. Musser Emeritus Professor of Psychology at Yale, and the Richard March Hoe Emeritus Professor of Psychology and Education at Teachers College, Columbia University. Today I want to talk a little bit about what I call assessment for education, or assessment for learning. When we think of educational assessment, we tend to think of it as assessment of education, or assessment of learning. The standardized test movement in education has been used primarily to measure what I call developed ability. It's been used to make predictions. It's been used to sort people. It is essentially a technology of historiography. It's looking at the past. I am convinced, and have been for a few years now, that the field also could be a prospective endeavor. It could be trying to influence the future. I think I was 93 years old when I was having supper with the president of ETS one night, and I suggested to Kurt Landgraf that I thought that ETS and the testing industry, the standardized testing industry, would soon be obsolete if it didn't begin to make some changes. 6 weeks after that supper, Landgraf and his trustees invited me to organize a commission on the future of assessment. I was able to collect a group of about 30 scholars of psychometric science, and education, and we spent 2 years, I claim, with their educating me about assessment and guiding my thinking about its future. The product of that effort was a report in which we claimed, among other things, that assessment could and probably should inform and improve teaching and learning, not just measure what had been learned. One of the papers written for that commission concluded with that challenge. It was a paper by Professor Wade Boykin from down at Howard University. Wade was challenging us, or challenging the field, to give as much attention to the development of intelligence as it has in the past given to the measurement of intelligence. One of the members of that commission was the late Michael Martinez. Michael wrote a very interesting little book. He called it Education as the Cultivation of Intellect. Boykin's challenge to the members of the commission, and especially to me, led me to kind of borrow or steal Michael's title, but to substitute for education assessment. Assessment as or in the cultivation of intellect. You know, we sometimes get ideas and we think of them as original. As I began to think about this notion, the idea that assessment could contribute to the cultivation of intelligence, I began to think about Socratic dialogues in that conception of pedagogy. Problems, questions, problematic situations are advanced as instruments for the stimulation of thought, stimulants for learning. If we look at measurement itself, we've got a well-developed area that we call formative assessment as opposed to summative assessment. In summative assessment, it's at the end, it's after the fact. It's trying to measure or determine status. Formative assessment tries to influence development. But the formative assessment tradition grows out of the use of measures of developed ability, measures of the status of ability, in order to inform next stage of intervention, to inform what you need to know. One of the major resources for the field is a book written by two of my colleagues, the late Bob Glazer and Jim Pellegrino, who was co-chair of my commission, and it's called Knowing What Students Know. Knowing What Students Know. I suspect, knowing both of these scholars very well, that if they were doing it today, they probably would want to add not only what students know, but what students are becoming or beginning to know or learning how to do. It would be a more dynamic and prospective effort than the older conception of somehow taking account of what it is we know or how much we know, and even more important, where we stand in relation to other people in terms of the status of our abilities. So that at the final years of my career, I'm trying to operationalize the notion of assessment for learning, assessment in the service of learning, assessment that is not so much concerned with accountability as it is concerned with the responsibility for the development of another. To do that, to teach well, for me to orchestrate the development of another person, I need to know a great deal about, yes, how bright the person is, how much that person knows, but more important, I need to know a great deal about the contexts and the behaviors by which that learner is seeking to know. So my conception of assessment in the future, or assessment for learning, assessment in the service of learning, is concerned with the use of the measurement sciences, the use of assessment strategies as teaching devices as well as measurement devices.